T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been a real smooth countdown. We passed the 50-second mark. Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power with the launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Well, hello and welcome to this edition of the Bullpen. I'm James Roy, and as always with me is Tom Chabria. Tom, how are you doing today?
I was good until this series started. The Astros are taking one on the chin right now against the Guardians, who were losing. You know, they're coming in having lost 10 straight, and yeah, I mean, I can't wait for football. I need that tomorrow. Can't wait for basketball. I need that tomorrow. I need the All-Star break for the Astros right now. They're doing so well, but I think they're running out of gas. They could use a couple days off.
Yeah, I'd say the Astros are kind of like, you know, I don't know, that guy who you're like, man, you look a little banged up, dude. Are you gonna be okay? And he pulls through for a bit and then turns around and just lets it all out. Just upchuck everywhere. Just like, okay, maybe it's time. Take a little break and reset. There's only so long you can go before the batteries run out. But I mean, if there was ever a time to discharge all the batteries completely, it's in the series against the Dodgers. I mean, that was a crazy series. And with my wife being a Dodgers fan, as you can imagine, I did not get to talk about it a lot. But here we are on this Houston podcast. I feel good to say. There was some fireworks on the 4th of July, and it was a good show. I loved seeing it, but it's been a minute. We took last week off. I'm in the middle of a move. I don't know if you can tell. There's still some boxes in the background, and I don't have quite enough Wi-Fi, so sorry if the connection sucks. But we're here, and I wasn't gonna let anything stop us from talking about Texans. So let's get into it, Tom. I mean, what is there to say at this point in the offseason? We're like, what? I don't want to say like what 10 days. 10 days away from training camp. We're kind of in that dead period where what could we talk about? Let's talk about some position battles that we're looking forward to going into training camp. So I'll ask you, Tom, I mean, aside from the offensive line, what is one area of this Texans team where you're like, here's some dudes that I think are going to duke it out and really get in a good fight for a position?
So I want to do something that I think is opposite of every other podcast show, whatever. I don't want to talk offensive line at all. Like, I don't want to talk position battle. You can. I won't. I'm like, everybody and their mother.
I've talked about it plenty all offseason.
We have, and I have, and there's a reason, obviously. But for me, it's like, what can you say about the offensive line that you haven't already said in some form or fashion 2, 3, 4 times already? So for me, I absolutely would like to talk about anything but the offensive line. I think you could talk about position battles at linebacker. I think that's a good place to go. I think you could probably talk about tight end too. I think that's a good place to go. Those are things that I'm kind of like sitting back 17 days till camp going, I wonder what those battles are going to be like.
I like that you brought up tight end because as much as I think most Texans fans are in tune with the fact that maybe isn't as set of a position as some people would think. And we'll talk about that too with Adam Rank and his lack of knowledge on the Texans as a team. But but tight end is one of those positions where, like, I think in my mind it's this, right? Dalton Schultz should massively improve with the scheme. He should be at least close to what we wanted / expected him to be. Uh, you know, when the season rolls around, if Nick Caley's doing his job right. But on the off chance that he's not, there are some interesting names. Brevin Jordan, I think, is very clearly tight end too, and I think has been held back for a lot of his career by injuries, by lack of opportunity, and when he's had opportunity, he's shown up. And then there's Cade Stover, who just I didn't really think got more looks than I honestly thought he would last season, and he did his best with them. So I have high hopes for him. And then we drafted an Iowa tight end, and I don't care that it was the 7th round. That's a good pickup no matter how you slice it. So I like that you brought up tight end. I'm really interested in the wide receiver depth. I think I know you talked about linebacker, but to me, how that shakes out, it could seem obvious to some. I mean, if I'm going off the top of my head, I'm like Nico Collins, Jaden Higgins, Christian Kirk, Jalen Noel, and then from there, it just gets really foggy at the end. And so I'm curious to see. Recently John Mechie was in an interview and spoke to the fact that Nick Caley's perceived scheme, which we don't really know a lot about what his scheme is going to look like, because even though we can say he's in the McVay tree, there could be some nuances to it based off his experience that he wants to add. It may not be a carbon copy of that scheme, but based off the scheme and the tree that he comes from, Mechie, shout out to Texans Jacob for this one. I believe he's the one who posted it, or at least let me be aware of it. But Mechie has said that scheme is very similar to what he ran at Bama, very similar to what Sark is running at Texas, and it's something that he could fit very well in given the opportunity. So then the question is, will he be given that opportunity? At this point, I don't even know if that competition is like for Mechie to have a roster spot, for Hutchinson to have a roster spot, or if it's about like where they fit. And it's amazing too, because last offseason, to me, there was a lot of people that were talking about this being the case. I think this is what a lot of people thought last offseason was, where it's kind of like, okay, Hutch and Mech, it's time to fight for your roster spot. I never really felt like they were fighting for a roster spot last season. I felt like they were pretty securely in the mix. Like that was a fringe conversation in my opinion. But this offseason, we're looking at, okay, two guys that I've talked to it before, the poverty mentality of a lot of franchises when they don't win, and it's all about potential, and it's like you all your draft picks make the roster, and you get these players that are deep cuts that you're like, this is my guy, I'm a huge fan of this guy. And we've seen it with the Rockets with Cam Whitmore getting shipped out to the Wizards. We're not a developmental franchise anymore. So, the Rockets are not a developmental franchise anymore. The Texans certainly are not a developmental franchise anymore. So it's not the question of, do you think that Mechie can reach his potential? Is he a second round pick? Could he do it? Is Mechie ready to contribute right now? Because if he's not, then he doesn't have a spot. That's just how it is. So, and that's you could apply that train of thought to a lot of positions. I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm trying to refocus, because you went into Cam Whitmore and we have two totally different takes on Cam Whitmore. Holy cow. Yeah.
What's your take on Cam Whitmore? Let me hear it.
Oh, Cam Whitmore, it wasn't that he couldn't be developed, because they're absolutely going to develop Reed Shepherd, and they're going to let him do that. They didn't sign another backup point guard. So this whole "we're not a developmental franchise" was nice lip service by Rafael Stone, but in no means is that the truth. Cam Whitmore flat out wanted more than they were willing to let him have. So he was like, yo, I need out, and asked out. This is not about.
I thought you were going to hit me with the rumor that he wasn't willing to give 7 to KD.
Nah, I don't buy into any of that. I think Cam Whitmore did not want to be what he is currently. And as the roster is constructed, he wasn't going to be much more than that. And for him, he thought he wanted more minutes. And when he couldn't have them, he's like, hey, move me. I think the Rockets did a great thing by sending him to Washington. It's where he wanted to go, take care of him now. Maybe he takes care of you later, something like that. Or, that's goodwill that, gets around the league. But I don't think that relates the same way in which the Texans, who I think have spent the time and the resources to develop these wide receivers. And if they were going to not develop them, they would have cut bait a long time ago. The wide receiver thing for me is really, you got Christian Kirk, you got Nico, and you got everybody else. And we figured out when we figured out. Do I like the young guys? Yes. Did I like the young guys in the past? Yes. So, I mean, we'll have to see what happens. I'm sure they've all been told, hey, go get it, go compete. So that's the way I look at the wide receiver room. I love what Texans United said about Irv Smith. I don't think Brevin Jordan is such a lock as I did once upon a time, because there's going to be competition. I really think Irv Smith has had flashes for other teams. Let Irv swerve was a thing for a while in fantasy circles. So I think Irv Smith could be really good. And obviously Cade Stover has a relationship. I think everybody's going to be in there. And I believe the Texans want a bunch of dudes constantly competing for a roster spot. They don't want anybody to assume that their roster spot is given. I think that's why Laramie Tunsil got let go. See, here I am talking about the offensive line. I swore I wouldn't do it.
Don't worry, we're going to talk about it a lot more with the chat.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that's why that happened. This is not a place where you're just going to walk in the door and, oh, it's my job. Same thing with the linebacker room. I mean, there was a time when Christian Harris was an absolute lock. Now Christian Harris doesn't look like he has a spot. So he could walk in the door and go, hey, there was a dude once upon a time that made a famous play that coach was like, this is my guy. This is a dog. He could be a real key piece. What's to stop Christian Harris from returning to that form? I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
Let's look at what, I can't remember the term for it, but here, in my opinion, the canon event, I believe, or I can't remember what they called it in Into the Spider-Verse, but like that like one event that's like set. It's not going to change. It shapes the way this
you
franchise
got it right.
moves.
It's a canon event.
Canon event? Okay, yeah. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. You'd think I would know, but it's been a minute since I've seen that movie. So, but the canon event for this team was D'Amico Ryans firing Bobby Slowick, and we had to wait a little bit after this season to see if he was even going to do it. But I think that changed the way this team moves. That is why I can confidently say that this team's not a developmental team anymore. And it's not about that they don't have the room for it. It's that they have the guys now that they can't just be like, well, we think they could, like, if they decide like their 6th or 7th wide receiver onto the roster is Mechie, because they want, usually your 6th or 7th guy is not someone, it would take a lot for him to lose his roster spot, but if they decide that he's the best option, sure. But I think that event of making the tough decision of, hey, it's not about like, what is that sound? Oh, I was like, is my phone going off? I couldn't even hear it. My bad. I just derailed the whole conversation. Don't worry, I remember what I was talking about. But I think that when you look at D'Amico, you spoke to it. Maybe we've taken it in different ways, but your roster spot isn't a lock. The starting spot isn't a lock. I don't want to say it's an entire shift. I mean, there's been points since D'Amico's been here where it's felt like certain positions were like, hey, I don't care what you did last year. Like, we're going to start the best guy. But I think that we can safely apply that to pretty much the whole roster at this point. And a lot of guys that have gotten some grace due to maybe the Texans having the opportunity to be that franchise who could hang on to a guy because he was a high pick or because of how much is invested in him, are going by the wayside. I think that the Texans have moved into a position where it's about who can contribute now and who is ready to bring this team a ring. Because as much as I have pushed the ring talk early, and Tom has tried to, reel me in at times with that because he's a reasonable person and that's why he's a great co-host. I think this is the season where like the Texans, the goal is always to win a ring, right? And this is where the Texans and Rockets kind of line up so closely. I think the Rockets are even further along in this train of thought based off of getting the 2 seed. They're way ahead of schedule. But I think that both teams are kind of aligning to that point where they've made moves and they've put this team in a position where it's like, okay, the expectation is a lot higher now than it has been the past few seasons. And the expectation from fans will always be, they're like, oh, CJ's the truth. The rookie season, maybe he could take us all the way. Oh, we're going into sophomore season. CJ had a really good rookie year. and this is where we added Stephon Diggs, we added all these pieces. This is the year. But I mean, and I think that's probably just going to be a common narrative just moving forward. But I feel it more this year that the Texans are kind of in that position where it truly feels like the only downside of this roster is the offensive line, and it's consistently been so that the offensive line has been a downside, but we've had other position groups to talk about. Last offseason, I recall us talking about linebacker depth being a huge issue, cornerback depth being a huge issue. How is safety going to look like? There was question marks that no longer exist for this team that we were talking about all last offseason into last season until the Texans kind of, put a lid on it. And so, yeah, I just saw this comment. Thanks. I wish that I had have seen that back when I was like, man, Tom, is that you? No, it's me.
I heard it, but I was like, man, he's going. I'm leaving alone. Let him ride.
I was locked in. What's that one? That screenshot of CJ Stroud when the score in the Bucks Texans game was 37-33, 46 seconds left, and it's like, if I say his picture, I'm about to lock in. I think someone posted that today on Twitter. But anyway. Enough about that. That brings us to the next point. I know you didn't want to talk about the offensive line, but we got a comment from Torres Brooks Kirsch about the offensive line, so I might as well segue into it. It's truly the only issue with the team, I think. I don't know if you disagree with that, but I think even backup quarterback, running back, name a position group on this team, and the only one that elicits a similar or close to a similar level of concern, in my opinion, is tight end. And even then, I don't even know if that's the word for it. But the question comes from Torres Brooks Kirsch. I'll put it up. Do you think that rookie tackle is going to start by the end of the season? That rookie tackle being Ariante Ursary out of Minnesota. I'll let you go first, Tom. What's your thoughts on that?
I think he's going to have to earn it. I think that's kind of what we've talked about. They brought in tons of competition on the offensive line. I think they're literally going to run with the best 5 guys, whoever that ends up being. I do believe Ursary's going to see some time. If he's not the starter, he'll definitely be the swing tackle. I see that being, and unless he's just absolutely god awful in camp. Like if he shows up and he flashes and, everything looks like the guy they drafted, then I don't see how he's not at least the swing tackle. It's just going to be tough. I really think that we don't know who the guys that are going to be on the offensive line. And there's position battles that we don't see, like that we think it's going to be, name your X wide receiver. Maybe it's Watson or maybe it's Barrios, like maybe they push Kirk outside. I don't know. Like for me, the biggest concern I think is not the offensive line. I think it's going to be the offensive coordinator. Everybody is just forgetting that this is this man's first go, and we're just assuming he's part of the tree. Dude's going to show up, ball out, no issues, not going to have any issues instilling an offense. He's just going to show up, and everything's going to be gravy. And I don't know. I mean, Cole Popovich, he's never been an offensive line coach. He's been consistent. We're just
he's
assuming.
Been a co-offensive line coach. He was co-offensive line coach in New England.
But never the guy. He's been one of the guys, never the guy. I need him to not have to argue with nobody. This will be the first time that what he says goes, and he won't have to run it up the flagpole to anybody, even if it's just a co. I need to see him. What happens when he needs to make adjustments? How does he handle that pressure? Those are things that you don't see in training camp. You don't see, in the press. You need to see him in game, actually go through the wars and figure out, hey, 78's killing us on the right side. I have to figure out a way to fix that and shift protection, help, whatever. And so likewise, if they can't run the football on offense, and that's kind of what it sounds like they want to do, what does the offensive coordinator do when they basically are saying, look, we're loading up the box and you're going to have to scheme out of that? We can say, hey, the guy's part of a great history, a lineage. He should be awesome. Till we see him do it. I mean, we thought the same thing about a guy that just got fired. When he showed up,
I mean,
the comments were the same. The comments, the feeling, the vibes for all the kids were the same. This dude's coming from pedigree. He's Miko's boy. You know, Niners offense was cooking. He should be cooking, and he did. But he also struggled too, and now he's outside looking in.
yeah, and that's why. So I think the biggest takeaway for us as fans should be, and you kind of encapsulated it in your discussion, is that it's going to take more than just like a couple weeks to assess what Nick Caley is, good or bad. But like, let's say Nick Caley comes in and lights it up. Bobby Slowick had a really good run as the Texans offensive coordinator, and his Achilles heel was that as soon as anyone caught on to what he was doing, he didn't have a move. He didn't have an adjustment to make. It was a one-trick pony. And so I don't want to say anyone, right? But like, I mean, I've coached at the junior peewee level, and I could scheme up one really good play that would go really well. And then the second the defense knew what was coming, if the first few games, I was like, okay, what else can I do? I had to like work through a whole other game plans to get other plays going in order to get around that stuff. But if your one trick is, okay, CJ, here you go, do it, and you have him seeing ghosts too many times, I'm worried about what Nick Caley's going to have to deal with in terms of CJ and what CJ's going to be after having dealt with the offensive line that Bobby Slowick put in front of him due to the scheme that he was running. So I agree with you, and I've said it as much before. The root cause is offensive scheme. I think that from a talent perspective, just based off the moves the Texans made, you make the argument that the most concerning position is offensive line. But I think they will also be the largest beneficiaries of a well-executed scheme. It turns out that as important as offensive line talent is, a scheme that can be carried out with simplicity, with ease, that is comfortable to the guys that you've brought in, can make even the lowliest offensive linemen look like superstars, so long as it is bought into by the guys. And that's why one of the big reasons that I have to be excited about Nick Caley as offensive coordinator is what he said, which we still have to see play out on the field. But him alluding to the fact that he's going to give more control to C.J. Stroud at the line of scrimmage. If C.J. Stroud can do what he did in his rookie season without the expectation of control at the line of scrimmage, and he's performed well with that ability, because it turns out during his whole college career he was field general at the line of scrimmage, making a lot of those calls for protections. And there's my camera. Oh, here I am. I'm back. Okay, sweet. But he calls out those protections, and does that stuff at Ohio State. When you simplify the scheme, the play calls aren't keeping him occupied for the whole play clock. I'm interested to see how this offense looks, simply because CJ gives off the energy of like a great football mind. Like every time that you hear him talk football, you're like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about, and he's shown it on the field. But that's without having that control of the line of scrimmage. So that's like, to me, the biggest thing I look to, my strand of hope that I'm clinging to with this next season is that. But I do agree with you that there is some reason to give like caution to. You're not going to hear me being like, oh well, Nick Caley's the best. This is the best offensive coordinator ever because he called one really good game. I would say the earliest, and like, he could have a really good first season and I'd be concerned for the next year, because that's how it was. I mean, you saw the signs late in CJ's rookie season in terms of the inflexibility of the Texans offense and how teams started to catch on to it. So I would say through this regular season is the earliest that I can say, okay, Nick Caley has like made adjustments. He's not predictable. I don't think there's he is scheming per game, and this team is not going to get figured out so easily. But even then, you need to give time for him. Like, what happens when someone figures him out in game? What happens when all the scheming he's done, and what was it like against the Vikings this past season, where the Texans came out entirely flat? Like, the offense was nowhere to be found, and the defense laid down, and all of a sudden we're down 34 points to the Vikings with no signs of life, and there was no hope, because I had no faith that Bobby Slowick was going to make any sort of adjustment to figure it out. That was probably the earliest sign that Bobby maybe wasn't cut out to be the Texans offensive coordinator, was in that moment. And people wrote it off because the Vikings defense is really good. But so I think you need a whole season with him before you can really assess what's going on. So I agree with you. There's reason to maybe give some caution to it. As far as Ursary goes, I've said my answer is simple on that. I'm not going to drone on anymore on that. But I think that it's likely he starts by the end of the season. If there's like an injury or he could take over for Cam Robinson in the middle of the season. But I don't think outside of that it's likely that he is the week 1 starter unless there's some sort of camp injury or something prior. Um, but let's see, not Texans related, but I thought it was a cool point to talk about. What about the Commanders' new modern throwback uniforms, close enough to the Redskins? I feel comfortable saying that because I honestly think that I'm not a huge fan of the name change, but that's neither here nor there. If the uniforms remain the same, I don't care if they slap a W on the side of the helmet. I think that they should. JJ Watt said it. I'll say it. Going back to the old Redskins uniforms is a massive win for anyone who enjoys watching a good uniform on the field. How do you feel about it, Tom?
I didn't like that they changed the name to begin with. I didn't understand it. I still kind of wish they go back. I get it. You kind of like stuck where you are now. I love the uniforms. You want to talk about that one? Have y'all seen the helmet for the Saints? That thing is amazing.
Man, it's the white with the gold stripe.
Yep.
That's got like what's the how would we even call their logo? I used to live down on the Mississippi Gulf Coast for a while. I know all those things, but I couldn't tell you what you call their logo.
The fleur de lis. There it is.
Fleur de lis. It's something French, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if there was ever a way to make, an alternate helmet, that's the way to do it. I mean, that's a really good helmet. But well, I mean, and what would you think? Let's turn it back around to the Texans. What are your thoughts if in the future about the Texans potentially in the future bringing in a white helmet in some way? Do you think it could just be a straight up white helmet, or do you think they would need to do something to it? I'm thinking personally, like white helmet, you need a red face mask, like a lighter red. But I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I think they would sell every last one. I don't know. It'd be back ordered for months. I've seen iterations of different white helmets. I've never seen a bad one. I thought they all looked good. So if they gave the Texans a white helmet, yeah, guaranteed. You're gonna like that. I just feel like that's really. I'm really interested to see what happens with this rivalry uniform that they're talking about. I don't know when that's supposed to drop, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'd love to see something space themed with that, or even purple. I guess I've seen some people say with like and the Dynamo did something with purple that was really good that I really liked. And with that, when I think of the red face mask with the white helmet, it feels like the Texans' subtle jab at like, hey, we can wear something close to the Houston Oilers too, and what are you gonna do about it, Amy Adams? Like, figure it out. Like, so I think it would be very similar to what the Cougars did when they wore those H-Town blue uniforms and got sent into this. But I mean, unfortunately, with NFL, all of those uniform protocol has to go through approval, and so I reckon the Titans would get a chance to look at it before the Texans could just throw it on the field. But I wouldn't mind seeing it. Let's see. I think that's about it. It's like I said, it's that point in the off season. Once training camp kicks in, I think we'll be in full gear. With a little more to say, but thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us on this Wednesday evening. Shout out to Fitted Dad. I want to show you my new fitted hat that I got from the Fitted Dad on Instagram. Space themed Houston Astros. I love the color. And this is kind of my style too, like this like cream top with like the brim. So he's doing great stuff with custom Houston sports hats. Man, I Ruben posted about the one he got today, and I saw your comment after I sent mine because I literally got the same hat, and you were like L, and I was like, I was like, look, both bullpen hosts gave their opinion on this, and they were very different.
To me, I don't know what it is about that hat. I've seen iterations of that same Houston HOU with like the stuff in the background, and I'm like, there's so many cool hats out there. Like for me, it's like at the bottom, like, and Ruben's got a phenomenal hat collection. Speaking of Astros, Fitted Dad literally just came out with a brand new City Connect with the cream, with the orange bill, and it's got the I'm after something like that. To me,
That's
like when you showed me that, or when Ruben showed that one hat, I was kind of like, it's not bad. I'm not gonna say it's a bad hat, but at the same time, it's like you have cooler ones that I've seen that like it's just an average hat. That's all.
No, yeah. And I don't know. There's a lot of good hats from the guy, so I'd highly recommend. And I know during the playoffs, usually I can get him to do a giveaway. So if you're following on Instagram, make sure you're tuned in for that. I know that's a while away, but I anticipate we'll be doing one of those this off season. Let's see. I was gonna ask where you got that hat, but you answered. I'm gonna buy one from him next time for sure. And it's at fitted.dad. And it's his name on there is Jose Casillas. So make sure you're following him and to check out his shop. If you see anything and you have questions about sizing and stuff, he's pretty responsive in his DMs too. And yeah, highly recommend. So that was not
always
paid.
coming out with new stuff.
I just like the product, so make sure you buy it.
Yeah.
We got to support local. Let's see. Oh, nice. All right, Tom, any last thoughts before we bring this thing to a close?
No, obviously as we get closer, it's just like I need to see him out there getting ready, getting fired up. I'd love to see some of the position battles. I messed up. Did not jump on the training camp bandwagon. All the tickets, disappeared immediately. But this offense going against that defense, that's going to be must see.
Yeah. And if you, much like Tom, did not manage to get in time for training camp tickets, fear not, for I already have a few people in my DMs that are trying to assist me with some training camp ticket giveaways, who were fortunate enough to get in there and get some. So make sure you stay tuned. Those giveaways will be coming out soon.
I'm going to have to get a burner and be like, that way I can get
I wouldn't want them to announce that I won it. No collusion there. Don't worry, Tom. I post the link to my giveaways to make sure that people see that it is legit and clean. So you don't have to feel bad about entering. And let's chat. Can Tom enter in this giveaway?
No.
We'll let the chat decide.
But yeah, I think those battles are going to be
all right.
awesome.
Well, my last thoughts are, yeah, 100%. My last thoughts are that, like Tom said, those battles are going to be awesome. But also, like Tom said, that we need football tomorrow, and we need basketball tomorrow. We need all Houston sports in unison. By the way, I didn't even mention it. This past Saturday I was at the Dynamo game out here in San Diego.
Got us a dub.
And that was, dude. What a game. I was in typical Dynamo fan fashion. I was like, man, we went down a goal. There's no way. And then they came back and scored one. And I'm like, oh, we're back in it. I was there. I was the only person that I saw in a Dynamo jersey. I think there was 2 other Dynamo jerseys across the stadium that I saw when I was celebrating the first goal. But man, these San Diego fans were not happy to see anyone near them to be happy. But it's only the second time they've ever lost at home. So glad to be there for that history.
First time those two teams ever played against each other.
Yeah, so massive dub for sure. And I thought Chucky Lozano was going to be over playing for Mexico, but I guess he was not there for
he's one of those guys that they had a falling out. For those that don't follow soccer, like I follow soccer, there was a lot going on. Some players were called away. The Dynamo were missing arguably their best player in Jack McGlynn. So to go on the road to get a win against a top tier team, I think they're number 1 or 2 in the West, and fully loaded. They had their full complement of players. Really, really gritty win. This Dynamo team, when healthy, I think is going to be scary good. If you're not following them, maybe you should. It's arguably the cheapest ticket in town. The SaberCats may be a little cheaper, but you can get a really good sheet itself for like $20. You really
I'll tell you this. the final attendance at Snapdragon Stadium in San Diego was 28,000, which is about double the amount of average attendance the Dynamo draw at a stadium of comparable size.
Not
Houston's
comparable.
can't. Oh, is it a little smaller?
Shell smaller. Shell the max
Shell
is
small.
22,000. So they could
Okay.
never get there. Yeah, they could never get there.
Okay, but I think that there's definitely more people that could support. This is us. This podcast fully supports the Houston Dynamo, and if you have a Saturday or a Wednesday free, Tom's got the plug. Tom knows how to get hit up Tom. Be like, hey, can I go to the game with you? I don't really want to go to the game with, and Tom will sit next to you and watch the Dynamo play because Tom is a diehard Dynamo fan.
Absolutely.
And so. Yeah, and if I'm ever in town, I've got the go ahead from the supporter group to get some supporter group tickets and sit in the thick of it. So
It's a good time.
But I feel, I mean, they don't call it Hell in a Shell for nothing. Make sure you bring plenty of hydration, or don't overdress. It's gonna be warm, but all right. With that, that's it for the show. Thanks for tuning in. I am James Roy, and you can find me at James Roy NFL on social media. Tom is Third Coast Tom on Twitter, and then TC Tom 1 on Instagram. So make sure you're following on there. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans.